AI is everywhere nowadays. It's in our phones, our cars, and even in our bird feeders. It's safe to say that as AI becomes more and more powerful, it's eventually going to become an essential aspect of modern living, much like the internet. Until then, however, it still has some quirks, I guess is a nice way of putting it. So I decided to do my part and test it out by having ChatGPT rank all the winners of Survivor US. And the results were interesting to say the least. To start, I actually had to prompt it twice. The first time, I simply asked it to rank the winners, and it did create some tiers, but it only listed about 5 winners per tier, so I tried it again, and specified to rank all of the winners. And I finally got a breakdown where it specifically mentioned that it ranked all 45 individual winners from the first 47 seasons, based on general audience perception, gameplay, and impact, which was definitely promising. Right off the bat though, you've probably noticed that it excluded Kyle, our most recent winner. Though to be fair, because Survivor 48 is so new, there isn't a ton of data for the model to work with, so I'll let that slide. First off is what it considers the top tier, referred to as the legendary players. Those regarded for their dominant strategic gameplay and iconic status, and honestly, it's a pretty solid list. Tony, Parvati, Sandra, Kim, Rob, Yule, Earl, Todd, Jeremy, and Natalie Anderson. I don't think anyone would deny that these players are some of the strongest in the show's history. While some could quarrel with certain aspects of their games, I can't really complain about any of these placements, even if I personally wouldn't have Natalie quite this high. The next tier is what it considers the high tier, the strong winners. This group consists of Denise, Parvati, Tyson, Sarah, Tom, Danny, Aris, JT, Adam, and Wendell. Wait, hold on. Something's not right here. Didn't we already list Parvati in the previous tier? Yeah, we did. Okay, so here is where ChatGPT started to become confused. As we already established, Parvati is listed twice, but more interestingly, her winning season in this is listed as Heroes vs. Villains, even though it got all the winning seasons right in the first tier, including Parvati and Sandra. If I had to guess, maybe it picked up a lot of the Parvati should have won discourse for this season, and so listed her here. Besides her, however, I'd say the rest of this tier is fine. I fully expected Tom in the top tier and Aris, Danny, and Adam in the tier below, just based on other winner analyses I've seen, but I could definitely see how it could place them here, through an objective lens. So, outside of the major hiccup with Parvati, I'd say these first 2 tiers are acceptable. The third tier, however, is a bit more questionable. These are what ChatGPT calls solid winners. Michelle, Cochran, Brian, Jenna, Chris, Bob, JT, Mike, Tommy, and Nick. Once again, we see them double-dipping winners, as JT, like Parvati, has been listed a second time. Also like Parvati, his winning season here is listed as Heroes vs. Villains, which is absolutely hilarious given his trajectory on that season. So, Heroes vs. Villains officially has 3 winners. You heard it here first. If I can give the slightest amount of credit, he at least was on that season, so I guess that's something. I interpret the remainder of this section as those who are more divisive amongst fans, either because of the quality of their winning season, like Mike, Cochran, and Tommy, or by the things they've done outside of the game, like Brian and Nick. The one that sticks out to me the most, though, is Bob. Bob is many things, but a strategic mastermind, he is not. I was fully expecting him to be at the lowest tier, but I've always liked him as a character, so I'm glad to see him get a little recognition on that front. This is the first tier so far where I just flat out do not agree with the placements. Cochran and Chris are 2 of my favorite winners, and I think they are way too low. Mike, Brian, Michelle, Tommy, and Nick I have a lot of respect for as players. And Jenna is there too. Needless to say, I don't have a ton of faith in our last tier. The bottom tier is what ChatGPT dons the controversial or less memorable winners. And let me tell you, this is where shit really starts going off the rails. If you've been paying attention, you've noticed that we have yet to see any new era winners show up in this ranking. Well, they're all here. Erica, Marianne, Jam Jam, Dee, Kenzie, and Rachel all occupy this group. Gabler wasn't even included, but more on that later. Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that the model is heavily skewed against the new era just in general, likely due to the less than stellar response to some of the more recent seasons. ChatGPT likely interpreted many of the frustrations that the fans have had towards this era and correlated it to feelings about the winners themselves. I'm sorry, but regardless of your thoughts on this run of the show, in no world are any of these bottom tier winners, especially Dee and Jam Jam. The remaining pre-New Era winners included in this tier are Natalie White, Vesepia, Amber, and Chris Underwood. Now, I understand why Natalie, Amber, and Chris are here, as their wins are pretty contentious, either by the manner in which they won or who they won against. But to me, Besepia is the clear outlier amongst this group. I get she's not the most popular winner out there, especially at the time, but it still feels wrong to have her here. Maybe there's just a large contingent of Nalia stands out there that I'm unaware of. The biggest omission from this group that immediately jumps out to me is Ben. Now, like I've said before, I like Ben. I am a Ben defender. A debender. I am so sorry. But his absence here is kinda crazy given how much hate he gets online. In fact, before I get too much further, there are other winners who aren't included in this entire ranking at all. I've already mentioned Ben, Gabler, and Kyle, but there's also Rich, Tina, Ethan, Fabio, and Sophie. A couple of these I can maybe understand, but the first 3 winners? That's just insane. So, who takes up the remaining spots? Well, so far we've already gone over 40 of the 45 winners in this ranking. JT and Parvati were listed twice, and 8 winners, 7 excluding Kyle, are completely missing. So that leaves 5 spots unaccounted for. And folks, this is where things get weird. 44 and 45 each get a non-winning player listed, Carson and Caleb. Part of me is like, I get it. These 2 were some of the most notable from their seasons, so maybe it picked up their publicity as them winning the game, or maybe Carson paid someone off. That just leaves our remaining 3, all of which come from the most recent season included in this analysis, Survivor 47. Sue, Sam, and Teeny. Notice anything? Yeah, all the players from 47 were in the final 4. Something tells me there's a recency effect going on here. That's the only explanation I have. It seems to be taking the most current available data and treating it as the most relevant. Also, poor Teeny. I know he wasn't exactly the most popular player this season, but I still feel bad for him being listed at the bottom. So yeah, according to ChatGPT, this is the definitive ranking of every US Survivor winner. And what lesson have we learned today? That AI still has a long ways to go before it becomes totally reliable. As we've seen, there's a lot of misguided or just straight up false information here. And I hope this has shown you that while AI can be an excellent tool, like any tool, it needs to be used properly and shouldn't be relied on. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. This video is a little different from what I usually do, but I think the results were super interesting. And now signing off. End of line.